Okay, so a little update video. I'm going to show you in a little bit more detail the handle section of the Unity Spotlight, particularly for the Dodge Chargers. 2006, when they reintroduced the model, all the way up to now, the 2016 and 17 models. Take the same model Spotlight and mounting bracket. Similar, or it's the same for the Dodge Magnums and the Chrysler 300 should you want to mount a Spotlight to one of those. Now, what I have here is the interior mounting kit, which is basically a little clip for a wire over here. You can see I replaced it with a blue one, just because I find the contrast looks nice, and I put a little connector over here. Now the factory connector is up in here, just remove this trim piece, and it's there. However, I cut it off and I joined it with this. One thing I should have taken into account more carefully is the sizing of the hole and putting on the connector, because I didn't put on the grommet first, but it's not a big deal. So the purpose of this video is going to be showing you how to remove it and how to put it back on properly. I'm filming freehand with my phone here, but we'll try and get some stable shots. Okay, so here's the tricky part. Now on this side here is the little nut. Here's the wedge. Now to get this out, if you put it on properly, it's pretty stiff. So the first thing you're going to want to do is loosen it from this side. So we're going to loosen the nut. Now once it's loose, that wedge is pulled so tight up against the shaft it's not going to do much. If it was already loose, you can just kind of try and push it a little bit. But the best thing I find is to take it all the way out, like this, and then we're going to put it on the other side. And we're just going to wedge it out a little bit. Careful, because this can and will scratch. So we're just going to pull, and that's going to free it out like that. You can see this is the newer style. There's an older one that's kind of hollowed out, made of a weaker alloy, and it always kind of breaks. So this is the newer style you want to have. And you'll see that's the importance of removing the electrical connector. Now you'll notice that this is the male end, which means there's an exposed contact, and this is the female end, which has a covering around it. And the reason we want that is because this is always live and we don't want this shorting out against anything. So then we're just going to carefully remove the handle. Now at this point we can go ahead and we can put on the little clamp and the rubber gasket, but I'm going to change the gasket where the Spotlight sits on the car, so we're going to have to remove this whole thing. Okay, so here's the replacement gasket. You can see this is the newer updated version, which is molded. It seems to be just an injection molded plastic. You see there's witness marks on it and everything, but anyways, this one here was just basically like a piece of punch pressed rubber or plastic, and I used that because it was the one that came with it and it was in usable condition, so that's why I put it on, knowing that I would be changing it anyway. So this is the molded rubber one. Now to remove the Spotlight, keep in mind we already have the handle taken off. We're going to loosen the hex nut over here and then carefully wiggle it out. Okay, so I loosened this guy up. Was a little bit stiff from a little bit of rain and stuff getting in there, so we just put some good old DW40 to lubricate it. We took our Allen key, clé Allen en français, and now we're just going to wiggle the light out. There we go. And carefully. And now that's out. So here's the new gasket. We got our master crap bit set. I'll go ahead and remove it. It's a T25 security bit, which is just the screw that I used, standard M5. Okay, so here's kind of like an after shot about a month after I did the installation. You can see that there's barely any corrosion at all inside here, and it held up pretty well. A little bit dirty from some debris, but here's the old gasket, and here's the new molded gasket. Figure out how, there we go, goes on like that. The other thing I'm going to do is, one, just clean this up, and two, spray this with a little bit of silicone lubricant, just for an extra layer of protezione. Clean this up a bit with paper towel and some isopropyl alcohol. It is actually scratched a little bit from when I drilled out the thing, because the bracket moved and it some of the shavings got in there and just scratched it up a bit, so that's what that is from. One other point I'll say, when I did this, I mounted it with metal screws first, and I drilled it in case these would pull. And what it did was it kind of pulled the metal out a bit, so not sure if I would do that again. However, it did pull, so it kind of served its purpose, but anyways, just something to be aware of. So, got the gasket here. We're just going to give it a spray with some pure silicone, just as an extra layer of protection when we put it on. That should do fine there. Okay, so we got it secured in place. It does sit a little bit higher, but it will compress as we tighten it down there. Okay, so the bracket's been quite nicely. It's not slipping or anything. The screws are nice and tight. We don't want to over tighten it. We'll also take the opportunity to clean inside here a bit. I'll clean this guy up too. Carefully put it back in. I'll take a second to explain how exactly this works a little better. This brass tubing with the bracket does not move. This stays in place. It's the inner shaft, this part here, that rotates like that. And then this little piece at the end here, that's what the handle catches and rotates to turn the head with the gear assembly. So by tightening this down, that's the play that the head has. Now we can tighten this down really tight so that when we're putting it in, this will stay at the same spot. You can see I made a little Sharpie mark there, so I know where it lines up with the screw. And then after, we can go ahead and loosen it or tighten it to our desire. Okay, now for the more complicated part. There's two spots where it catches. If we can get it to focus. There we are. One is this little notch on the inner shaft. As I say, the brass tube does not move. It's just this part that moves when I move the head, you know, up and down. And then when I turn it left and right, as if I were to twist the handle, that's the part that moves. You can see we have a little notch or a key mark there that the handle catches. So the trick is to kind of look inside there. You can see on the corner here, where that little key is, that's what catches the notching on the brass tube. So that has to, we couldn't push it in this way, otherwise it's going to hit, so it has to go like that. And then the flat part here is where the wedge grabs it, and then the key, the notch here is where the key inside here catches it. So we have to line all those up, and then we can slide on the handle. However, before I do that, I just want to show you, these are the little pieces. So the rubber that will go on and push against the trim, the little collar with set screw, you have to loosen first, and this is just like a little wire holder, but I'm not going to put that on because I've already crimped on the connector. This would have been the grommet, so we'll hold on to that if I ever replace the connector. And this is the clip that clips on to hold the wire. So you can see there's where we put it on. One thing I will say, don't over tighten that, otherwise you will bend the tubing and it's going to push onto the inner shaft. So you just want it snug enough to hold a little rubber in there. That's about it. And then we'll put the handle back on as I showed. So the handle's back on. We put in our little wedge. Find it easiest to take the nut out, push it in, make sure it sits flush, and then we tighten it from the other end. Okay, so we snugged it up with the wrench. Again, you want to push it so that you feel the little springy action, which is the part on the back making contact with the center shaft. And we will plug it in and test it. There we go. It works nice, does a full 360 and moves around with no flickering. We're getting good contact. And that is that.